God might have made a mistake because he created what?
Men.
The use and leverage of that type of institutional power is something we don't talk about. And so when we look through the 1970s and the 1980s, we don't talk enough about the acceptance and widespread use of pushing Black men out of families using institutions that are designed, functionally around some degree of law enforcement.
Dr. Hassan Johnson has coined a term called blue leashing. It's the basic principle of weaponizing the state and the legal structure against men in a relationship, and more specifically Black men, so that in any relationship, there's always that specter of, if you don't do what I ask you to do or tell you to do, or if I'm unhappy with you, I can simply weaponize the state against you. That's one of the reasons why we have an increasing number of passport bros. The idea that a woman can call the police crying and that could be the end of your freedom is something that is extremely scary, especially in a society that just simply doesn't like men very much, which we find ourselves in right now.
Hey, throw that muff. Throw that muff. Hey, throw that muff.
We find ourselves in a society today that detests men to the point where even young boys and even baby boys are not exempt. You can see many young ladies are very comfortable with the idea that if I can't have a young girl, a baby girl, then I'll just not have a child at all. It is so pervasive that now in 2025, a young boy picking up Instagram could very easily run across multiple posts of grown women simply saying that young boys even have no value.
Whether it's in the court or on the street, off a cop car or walking, whatever it is, we don't talk about it that way. And we have to start looking at these things institutionally. One of my problems is we have too many of these conversations strictly about individuals, who likes who did what to who, but we gotta also start looking at these things institutionally. These were not arbitrary things that women did just because they were evil. These were things that they were able to do because of policy. And one of the things I argue is over generations, that policy access begins to shape worldview and behavior, meaning that the entitlement, the assumptions about Black female superiority that many of us talk about in the Black community, we can't name it, nobody will admit to it, but we've been talking about it amongst ourselves as men for the longest. This is not something that comes out of nowhere. This is conditioned behavior from having access, from having opportunities, from having resources, from having a safety net that your men don't get.
Salute to Dr. Hassan Johnson. One of the things that makes him so valuable is that he gives voice to many of the things that are baked into the cake of American society that we simply just don't notice as Black men particularly. When he does his Patreon movie reviews, he uses the Onyx score. Basically what he's saying is how many positive Black men are in this movie? Does the Black man act in a certain way? Does he wear a dress? All kinds of things that have become normalized. And then when he talks about the society as a whole, there are simply some things that as Black men, we know we would never do.
Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm studying the unseen body and creative spaces, erasure and exposure of the queer.
Hey, I'm Nina, and I studied the arts, education, and social justice.
I'm Victoria, and I studied remembering or forgetting, navigating international conflict through collective memory.
Hi, I'm Nunyala. I'm studying living artfully, art as ritual, therapy, and pathways of decoloniality.
I'm Naomi, and I'm studying Black political economy.
I'm Natalie, and I'm studying fashion history and gender studies.
My name is Marie, and my concentration is the radical disruption for survival, development in sub-Saharan Africa, and social anthropology.
Hi, I'm Ava, and I study woman, fugitive family, relationships, and identity, the transformative Black woman.
As Black men, we understand that getting it out of the mud is just part of the Black male experience. Oftentimes, we aren't going to have the connections legacy-wise that are going to pull us up or give us a leg up on an opportunity that we may not have had otherwise. But as Black men, we've learned that we have to accept this. And so when we go into loving relationships thinking that, well, at least here we're going to get a fair shake, well, in the environment that we've seen is there now, what did they say in the adage about those with power, what it does in corruption and whatnot? Which I'll refrain from saying. Simply put, if someone has power over you, they're not going to give it up. And so now in this environment, now where we're starting to see change afoot because, well, guys will walk away. If it's not a deal that's acceptable to guys, why participate? And well, there are some guys that might be happy that the status quo is changing.
Now, we know in the last 8 or 9 months, a lot of that has been broken down. A lot of that has been, torn down. It's being dismantled. I've said this before, Black women are starting to experience life the way Black men have been living it, without a safety net, right? But the reason I can talk about that is because prior to the last 8 or 9 months, going back the last 60 odd years, what we've seen is access to resources. And those resources have shaped behavior and worldview in Black women. Now, we could talk about individuals that defied that. Yes, I've known women that purposely didn't take their husbands to court. They just amicably set up a breakup. They divorced, signed paperwork, called it a day. That didn't talk mess about their the child's father to the child. I've seen examples of that. So this isn't a question of all women, but it's enough because these are systemic practices, right? And so you have women who are participating in the removal and exclusion, the banishment of Black fathers simply because they can. And this is something that's passed down. I come from a family of majority women. I've seen the little war councils, right? Where you have grandmother talking to daughter, talking to granddaughter about what they can do. I've seen those conversations with newly married women where older women are reinforcing for her what she can do if he doesn't act right. And much of the time, it was always about blue leashing.
Blue leashing, verb, noun, adjective. The act of a Black woman, or I would say any woman, calling law enforcement on a Black man not primarily out of fear or danger, but as a means of control, discipline, and retaliation, weaponizing state power to keep him, quote unquote, on a leash.
Men are naturally submissive. All you got to do is call the police on them. Watch how submissive they get. They might even cry.
Of course, there were some other things in there about, fighting with him, arguing with him, stressing him. There was all of that. But there was also this over-reliance on state resources, right? The idea that you can push this on him at any particular moment and use it against him. You can call the police. You can make up something. This is why some of these women are getting caught on video, because for the longest, we didn't have smartphones. Right. So you're actually seeing, and I've shown a few of these over the last few months, a few of these videos of women getting caught talking about, I'm going to lie to the cops, telling the man directly, I'm going to lie to the cops. This is what I'm going to say to them. And then when the cops get there and even catch them in a lie, those women are surprised when they get handcuffs put on them, because for the longest they didn't. They wouldn't be arrested. They could get away with that. Women could lobby, accusations on celebrities. And if they weren't able to settle out of court, or, even worse, they found out that this person was lying, their names wouldn't even be put in the paper. They would suffer very few to no punishments. So when you have a game that's rigged that way, where you can make false accusations with no repercussions, how do you think you're going to start to see the world? How do you think you're going to start to see your own behavior? The entitlement level went through the roof over the last 6 decades for a reason. This is conditioned behavior based off of policy.
We could be meaner to men. We should be meaner. Sounds like a plan.
When people are having discussions about a male loneliness epidemic, I think they're reading the signs wrong. I think there are a lot of guys that would love to be in an intimate, loving relationship, but if the threat of jail or having your kids taken away from you, or being a sort of indentured servant in that you have to pay money on a monthly basis, or you risk being detained by law enforcement, that is not the way that anyone wants to see a relationship with someone that they care about end. But that is waiting there. And especially with blue leashing in some situations where a guy's thinking that she could weaponize the state against me for even trying to love my kids. And as a matter of fact, there are two incredible stories, one by Dead Set Anime at the end of this particular video by Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, and another by Growth Talk with Kofa, detailing their difficulties trying to be good dads. So if that's what you have waiting out here for these men, Of course you're going to have a male loneliness epidemic, quote unquote, except it's being called the wrong name. It's a guys keeping themselves out of trouble epidemic.
What the f you looking at? Get your ass out my driveway, ho. You don't pay for either. $170,000 to your hoe, but $11,000 in your son's bank account. $11,000.
It's very easy to overlook the fact that Brittney Renner is 6-7 years older than the man she had a baby with. So she should be the more mature one in this situation, but she understands that any kind of blithe on this gentleman's resume that makes him look bad could cost him his NBA contract, or she could drag him back in the court again. And this, again, is for the more mature one using these tactics against a guy that she met when he was a high school guy and she was well into college. Now imagine if she understands that she could use the state, she can blue leash an NBA basketball player, then what chance do you think the regular average guy on the street has? And the answer to that is not very much. And that's why guys are walking away.
So when you have a game that's rigged that way, where you can make false accusations with no repercussions, how do you think you're going to start to see the world? How do you think you're going to start to see your own behavior? The entitlement level went through the roof over the last 6 decades for a reason. This is conditioned behavior based off of policy. But as it pertains to the Black family, just wanted to kind of stop and make a statement about when we talk about Black father absence, there is another thing we need to put in there that goes beyond just Black men don't care about family, or Black men are in prison, or, Black men are just inherently trifling, or they just want white women or Latino women. These kind of dismissive, deflective, stereotypical statements about Black men used to deflect and change the conversation so we don't actually have to critique women in particular. But really, what we also have to pay attention to is the use and abuse of institutional leverage on excluding Black men from family and decision-making.
I will, of course, link the rest of Dr. Hassan Johnson's video in the description box of this particular video, but he is only touching on what is baked in the cake in the interaction between Brittney Renner and her former baby daddy, PJ Washington. She understands that she has any variety of levers that she can use to basically cost him something that's very valuable. And he has to be extremely careful, even though he's like 7 years younger than this woman, in the minefield that's laid around him. And he just wants to see his son. Imagine every single time he goes to pick up his son, he has to go through this. And he's rich. What about the guys that don't have all these resources and they're dealing with this every single time? I'll put it to you this way. If you watch the rest of this video, you will be surprised at the kind of things that the state has made available to women that are upset at their former lovers. And Dead Set Anime's story is right at the top of the list, followed right behind it by Growth Talk with Kofas. Listen to the video, listen to their stories, and you'll hear exactly why there is no male loneliness epidemic. There is a men don't like the leverage that men have in relationships epidemic. Men don't want to end up estranged from their children epidemic. Men don't want to end up in jail because they couldn't pay child support and they're in arrears epidemic. Men are going overseas because they want to find women that aren't going to weaponize the state against them caring about their families epidemic. Or simply put, guys want to be around people that like them epidemic. However you choose to slice it. What's happening now in this modern environment is not one that's very healthy for young boys to take part in. And guys are backing out of it. Now you can call it what you choose to call it. But if you have a store and nobody is coming to your store, do you blame the customer or do you blame the product? Because it's quite clear what is going on right now. A lot of guys, very well-to-do guys that are on their way up, are saying, I want no parts of what's in this store. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below. I'll catch you next video. Take care.